We're going to officially start the press conference. I'm going to speak very briefly, then I'm going to call on Congressman Stephen Lynch, and he will reintroduce himself for the press, and then Congressman Thomas Massie, and then the families. But I'm going to read the order of the speakers, and then make my brief comments, and then turn it over to Stephen Lynch. The families that are here today, and they again will reintroduce themselves: Terry Strada, Alice Hoagland, and Sylvia Carver. These are family members who lost loved ones during 9/11, so therefore I will let them explain why they're here today and why they support H Resolution 428. Several years ago, I read this book written by Bob Graham. It's called Intelligence Matters. The subtitle tells you more than just the title of the book. And it's the CIA, the FBI, Saudi Arabia, and the failure of America's war on terror. If you remember, Bob Graham was one of the co-chairmen of the 9/11 Commission. And he, for a number of years, has been outspoken on this issue of the 28 pages, of why the 28 pages in the report were classified. And he has been calling for a declassification of the 28 pages. I want to give him the credit today because he is the one that got me interested in this issue. I'm from North Carolina. I have never met with so many families that have lost loved ones in the three tragedies that happened on 9/11. After reading the information, the way the process works very quickly, a member of the House has to write a letter to the chairman, Mike Rogers, and the ranking member, Dutch Rupenberger, and ask permission to go down in a classified setting to read the information. So we write the letter, and mine took about 3 or 4 weeks before they responded back to say that we give you the authorization. The room is guarded, which we can understand is very much needed problem. And then when you go in to read the 28 pages, you have someone sitting with you, so you cannot take any notes. It's whatever you might remember. And we cannot divulge, or we would be in serious trouble here as a member of Congress if we divulged any of the information that we read. A couple of other points very quickly. I do not think a nation like America will remain strong if the nation does not demand the truth. And after reading the 28 pages, I can honestly say, in my opinion, I can't speak for these two men, there's nothing that deals with national security. There are other issues, but not national security issues. That's why the call by the families across this nation, with 3 families being here today, the families have called on Congress for a number of years, along with Senator Bob Graham, to declassify the 28 pages. And I want to thank the families for being here today. I will close this press conference and we will allow you to ask questions. But with that, I'm going to ask Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts if he will speak, and then Thomas Massie from Kentucky will follow him, and then the families will come up. So thank you for being here today. And Stephen Lynch is the co-sponsor of this legislation. Thomas Massie has joined Stephen and myself and 4 other members of the House in this legislation, calling for the President to release this information. And so therefore we need for you to put pressure on your representative back home to join in this effort for the truth. Stephen Lynch.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, my friend. First of all, I want to thank the families for being here. As much as we might encourage members to go and read the classified information and to join us, really the power of the families, and I have a lot of families in my district and from Massachusetts that lost loved ones on those flights coming out of Boston. And so I just want to thank you for turning your loss and your grief into a positive step for all of our country. And I think it's very important to have your support. We appreciate it. I want to thank you all for being here. Today we're here to bring attention to House Resolution 428, which Congressman Jones and I have jointly introduced, and which Congressman Massie has co-sponsored. In December, we initially introduced this bill, and this important resolution calls for the declassification of the 28-page section of the Joint Congressional Inquiry into intelligence activities before and after the terrorist attacks of September of 2001. It is important to remember that these were not simply sections that were redacted, which is quite common in these type of intelligence reports. This 28 pages was excised. So the entire section, 28 pages, was removed from the body of work that was actually presented to the public. I'd like to begin by thanking my dear friend and colleague, Congressman Jones, for all of his efforts on behalf of this issue and for our families and for our country, and for working with me to craft this resolution. I'd also like to acknowledge former Senator and former Chairman of the Senate Select Intelligence Committee, Bob Graham, for his work. He was unable to be here with us today, but he did send a message of support, and Senator Graham has worked tirelessly to see that these pages are made public. I've had the opportunity to maintain contact with him by phone, and also here again today, our families of the victims of the tragic attacks on September 11, 2001. Our nation suffered a terrible loss, and we were all devastated by the horrific events on 9/11. Another strange coincidence is that I was elected in the Democratic primary in Massachusetts on September 11th. That's the day I'm the first post-9/11 member of Congress. So the world changed, Washington changed, my responsibility changed, a lot of lives changed on that day, and that is not lost on me. But importantly, the families here today, men and women who lost sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, brothers and sisters, their families and their lives were forever altered that day. The American people and the families of the victims in particular deserve answers and deserve the opportunity to have a greater understanding of these events, and that has yet to happen, unfortunately. 12 years after the attacks, many unanswered questions still remain. I strongly believe that these pages contain information that is vital to a full understanding of the attacks on 9/11 and the circumstances that led to them. But this is not only a question of transparency, which Walter talked to. It's not just that transparency is good in this case and looking back and answering questions. I think also these 28 pages, the nature of the disclosures here, I think is instructive to our foreign policy going forward. So it is not just looking backward, it is actually informing Congress to make sound, solid decisions going forward. That might be the most valuable. While there is certainly decency and justification for releasing these documents, there's also, I think, instructive value going forward. I read the classified sections this past October after being encouraged to do so by my friend Mr. Jones, and after reading them it became clear to me that we owed it to the families of the victims and to the American public to work to make these pages available. I do want to just add a little of the details as Walter correctly laid out, sort of the situation. It's a somewhat cumbersome process for a member of Congress that has 9,000 other things to do, but you've got to submit your letter down, there you go down, and they sit with you, and you really don't have an opportunity to answer questions, and you're not allowed to take any notes. But after reading the 28 pages, I only said one thing during the time that I was there. And at the end of the day, I informed both intelligence officers who were there with me that day. I said, I need to be honest with you. And I said, when I get up from this table and I go out that door, I said, I am going to sponsor a resolution before the United States Congress to make this information public. And they both scratched down notes of their own. They were allowed to keep notes, but I said, that's how important I think this is. And I said, I think it's important that I be honest with you. Because I feel so strongly about this. I'm pleased to be working with my colleagues from North Carolina, Congressman Walter Jones and Mr. Massie from Kentucky. I think Mr. Grimm from New York is on board. I know that, I'm trying to think, Congressman from California, Alcee Hastings from Florida, Congressman California, Dana Rohrbach is also on board. And so we have we have growing interest because of the involvement of the families of the victims. And we want to make sure that these pages see the light of day. And I want to take this opportunity just to urge my colleagues in the House of Representatives to review these pages and work with us to ensure that they are declassified, to encourage the President to take that step and declassify these documents. Thank you. May God bless you. May God have mercy on the victims and their families, and may God continue to bless these United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to be brief. I want to echo the statements of Congressman Jones and Congressman
Your name, Congressman?
Lynch. I'm Thomas Massie from Kentucky. Look, this is something that the families deserve to know. This information, it's been a decade, over a decade, 13 years since this event happened. And we've had a narrative in the media and in the press and in the collective American conscience of what happened that day, but I don't think it's fully informed, and it won't be fully informed until everybody gets to see these 28 pages. And just to echo what Congressman Lynch said, I'm here for the families, but I'm also here for our country to look forward. We have to decide how to prevent another 9/11 type event from happening. Until you have the full picture of what actually happened, the intelligence picture, how can you participate in that debate? How can we know that what we do will prevent another 9/11 from happening? And how can we know that some of the things that maybe we would otherwise endeavor to do might be overreactions? So also I want to talk about the experience of sitting down and reading these 28 pages. It's in a room where it's soundproof and you're escorted in there and you're escorted out and there are no notes. But this is something that's sort of shocking when you read it. As I read it, and we all had our own experience, I had to stop every couple pages and just sort of absorb and try to rearrange my understanding of history for the past 13 years and the years leading up to that. It challenges you to rethink everything. And so I think the whole country needs to go through that. It's going to be difficult and it could be embarrassing. But that is no reason to keep the truth from the American people. I want to finish with two challenges. I want to challenge all the congressmen who have not read these 28 pages, who have the ability to go read these 28 pages, to do it for your constituents. There are 435 districts in this country. Every congressman needs to see these 28 pages. Then I challenge them to co-sponsor Congressman Jones and Congressman Lynch's bill like I have. And finally, the final challenge I want to issue is to those who would keep these pages secret. You need to have your own press conference. You need to be held to a standard to answer the questions. Why do you want to keep these 28 pages secret? In my estimation, as shocking as the 28 pages are, and as much as they sort of rearrange my understanding of what happened, I don't think it would hurt our national security to release this, and it would give families the answers they deserve as well. Thank you very much.
The way the process works, very quickly, a member of the House has to write a letter to the chairman, Mike Rogers, and the ranking member, Dutch Rupenberger, and ask permission to go down in a classified setting to read the information. So we write the letter, and mine took about 3 or 4 weeks before they responded back to say that we give you all Strata, Alice Hoagland, and Sylvia Carver. These are family members who lost loved ones during 9/11, so therefore I will let them explain why they're here today and why they support H Resolution 428. Several years ago, I read this book written by Bob Graham. It's called Intelligence Matters. The subtitle tells you more. We're going to officially start the press conference. I'm going to speak very briefly, then I'm going to call on Congressman Stephen Lynch, and he will reintroduce himself for the press, and then Congressman Thomas Massie, and then the families. But I'm going to read the order of the speakers, and then make my brief comments, and then turn it over to Stephen Lynch. The families that are here today, and they again will reintroduce themselves. The title of the book, and it's the CIA, the FBI, Saudi Arabia, and the failure of America's war on terror. if you remember, Bob Graham was one of the co-chairmen of the 9/11 Commission, and he, for a number of years, has been outspoken on this issue of the 28 pages, of why the 28 pages in the report were classified. And he has been calling for a declassification of the 28 pages. I want to give him the credit today because he is the one that got me interested in this issue. I'm from North Carolina. I have never met with so many families that have lost loved ones in the 3 tragedies that happened on 9/11. After reading the information